Welcome to Real Estate and Taxes with Lakshay. I will be helping you minimize your taxes. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in on my Tuesday session on real estate and taxes. And today we're going to be talking about a new rule scaring all the Airbnb landlord owners in regards to GST and HST. So today's agenda will be the current taxes that are impacting the Airbnb industry, an example of what the recent court case did, and then an example with our numbers, followed by key takeaways and conclusion. Right now, Airbnb is taxed as regular real estate rental income. You report it on P776, and you also have to prepare HST separately at the time of tax filing, which is 13%. There's also an additional tax called municipal accommodation tax of 6% that also gets paid by you in terms of starting May 1st, 2023. Today's presentation, I wanted to talk about a real-life example where a person who owned a property for a very long time had switched it from a long-term lease to a short-term Airbnb property, and at the time of sale, he saw an unforeseen bill of $80,000 in terms of HST. So in this scenario, an incorporated landlord had owned a property for roughly 10 years. Out of those 10 years, he did a long-term lease for 8 years, and for the last 2 years, right before the sale, because of the COVID, he had put it up on short-term lease. On the short-term lease, he had collected HST on Airbnb, and then he had also filed HST. Because there was a change in use from a long-term rental to a short-term rental, now he was subject to HST by the CRA. Why? Is because they said you are exempt from HST if you're operating as a residential complex. In his scenario, he was using it as a residential complex, but the corporation is the one who was the owner of the property. And very recently, before selling the property, he was operating it as a hotel, motel, kind of furnished apartment. This basically disqualified him from the residential tag to now running commercial activities. And because of this, CRA said you have to be subject to $80,000 of HST. So how did this trigger HST? Well, at the time when he was doing the short term, he had to submit a form of change in use. When you're doing change in use of property, you are basically changing the activities from residential complex to commercial activities. And that basically told CRA that this is considered a deemed disposition of the property when you're selling it. So if you are an Airbnb renter, you should strongly consider changing and following the next set of guidelines that I'm going to be providing. So in my guidelines, the first and foremost you want to do is you want to make sure right before selling the property that it is considered a long-term property. It is basically rented for more than 60 days. The second strategy you would want to do is make sure the property is under your name rather than your corporation's name. Number 3 suggestion would be furnished Airbnb apartment is not considered a residential complex. It is actually considered like you're operating as a hotel or motel. So technically what you should be doing is in a long-term lease, you should not be providing amenities that you would be finding at a hotel or a motel, right? So you must be wondering, why was HST applicable? The point why it did become applicable is because the property was operated as a hospitality, like a hotel or motel, and that's why pushed CRA to make this decision. The second thing was the possession of the property right before the sale was less than 60 days. So anyone that was coming was a short-term lease, short-term rental for a weekend or a couple of days. Third and the last final point was the building was not owned by an individual, it was owned by a condo corp. And now in this scenario, he will have to appeal the case, which he has already against his $80,000 HST liability. So for more tax tips like these, follow our YouTube channel called Real Estate and Taxes with Lakshay. It will be at Tuesday at 2 p.m. that we do these live sessions. So feel free to join the next one. Thank you.